Hi everyone, welcome to my channel where I discuss all things human design. On today's episode, I'm going to be continuing my series around the different human design types and conditioning. Today, I'm going to be speaking about manifestors, and if you're curious to learn about generators, I've linked that video down below, and I'll be coming out with a projector and reflector video soon, so make sure to hit that subscribe button. I'm really excited about this topic because I think it's so important, especially when diving into human design and learning more about it. And if you're new here and you have no idea what I'm talking about when it comes to conditioning or what human design is, I've linked several resources in the description box below where you can learn all about human design. As I mentioned, I'm very excited to chat about manifestors and conditioning today because I think this is one of the most, if not the most important topic to understand about human design once you go through your strategy, authority, and not self-theme. All of us have different proponents to conditioning, and each of us are quite different. Today's video is simply meant to be informational. It is based off of the original work of human design, but as you guys know, I don't script these, I'm just thinking out loud. I do have some notes for some guidance on my laptop that I'll be referring to, but I think this is just one of the most fascinating topics, especially when it comes to living your human design. With that, let's get into manifestors when it comes to conditioning. I have 5 different areas of conditioning to review today, and you may have all of these, you may have none of these. This is simply just some thought or some food for thought, and I hope you enjoy this episode. The different areas that I'm going to be speaking about today, you might be a manifestor watching this and have all of these. You might not relate to any of them. And if you're a manifesting generator, which is a bit of a hybrid human design type between generator energy and manifestor energy, I highly recommend watching this video as well as the generator video to get the full scope of potential conditionings that you might be facing with your human design type. As we all know, if you're familiar with the manifestor type, manifestors are fiercely independent. As children, manifestors are often not really that cuddly. They can be close with their parents, but they're not necessarily physically close, and they might actually crave and want that alone time. They're very independent people. So this is a conditioning that a lot of manifestors have where they act independently. As some of you may know, the manifestor human design type creates its energy actually through its throat energy center, and this energy is not consistent. So it's very important for manifestors to recognize how their energy operates and not be afraid of collaboration and working with others. The conditioning is being a little too independent, feeling like you have to do everything on your own. And the deconditioning is being more open to collaboration, especially delegation. I see so many manifestors burning themselves out because they try to control every aspect of a situation or what they're working on when they could be trusting the process and delegating some of the tasks that they have in front of them. The second conditioning that manifestors have a tendency to have is impactfulness. They might have this tendency that they need to leave a mark. They need to get others to follow them or to work with them. As children, this often shows up in trying to control situations or outcomes, or getting different children on the playground to side with you or work with you. And as I described in my first ever YouTube video, which was actually on manifestors, you don't need to worry about trying to get people to work with you. You just have to trust that the right people will always show up. This goes back to the fact that manifestors have a very specific aura where people will either want to work with you or they won't want to work with you. There's nothing bad about this. I kind of think of it as this built-in BS detector. You're not worried about if people are working with you or not because you always can be confident that the people that are in front of you are the ones that are meant to work with you. However, the deconditioning of that, what that looks like is practicing informing. Rather than telling people what to do and getting them to work with you by force, you practice informing. Informing is actually the strategy of manifestors, to inform, to tell people. And when you do this from a place of consciousness and you're aware of how you're informing others, and then you're sitting back and you're trusting that the right people will show up, everything just becomes a lot more aligned. The example that I used in my previous video, I believe, was about carpooling. So if, for example, you're a manifestor and you're driving from Boston to New York and you want to share the car, or you want to drive but you want to make sure that you're not driving by yourself, you cannot force people in to carpool with you, but you can just put it out there. You can inform others that you're driving from Boston to New York, and the right people who want that ride also, who would also benefit from that carpool, are going to show up and drive with you rather than feeling like they're forced to go with you. The third conditioning I want to talk about with manifestors is freedom of movement. A lot of times manifestors have this conditioning towards freedom and movement and action where they resist different constraints and they resist change. And so they kind of hold themselves up and they don't necessarily let themselves explore. A lot of times manifestors get into this loop, feeling sometimes quite lonely, feeling like no one wants to work with them. And then they kind of put themselves on their own and they don't necessarily leave the environment that they are comfortable in. And so freedom of movement is something that is very important for manifestors to have that autonomy. But the deconditioning, what it looks like is the respect of autonomy for others. So realizing that, again, you cannot force others to do things that you want them to do. You can inform them, but you also must respect the autonomy of others and realizing that you cannot control all of the different outcomes, especially of those outside yourself. This is something that can be relevant advice for all humans. Sometimes, especially if we have a defined ego heart center, even if you're not a manifestor, you might have this tendency to want to control different things. An example I can think of off the top of my head is if you are trying to control the seating arrangements at a dinner. There are definitely times in life where perhaps we have assigned seating for a dinner, but then sometimes it's letting go of control and just letting things happen serendipitously and letting people sit next to each other and not worrying about who's sitting where and controlling the situation. The fourth thing I want to talk about when it comes to manifestors and conditioning is spontaneity. Now, spontaneity is actually a critical part of being a manifestor or a manifesting generator. I often tell manifestors and manifesting generators that when you cannot explain the why behind why you're going to go after something, that's usually an indication to go after whatever that thing might be. Now, this is great, but the reminder here or the deconditioning is to understand that there's a time and place for spontaneity. A lot of times what ends up happening is manifestors and manifesting generators don't complete the projects that they start because they have a spontaneous thought and they go after something else. And while sometimes it makes sense to switch projects and not finish something, it's also important to realize how that's affecting you, how that's affecting others, and why you are leaving a project to go on to another project. This is not necessarily a bad conditioning. In fact, none of these conditionings are meant to be bad. As I always like to remind, in human design, there is no good or bad. There's just simply this idea of understanding how our energy operates. Now, the fifth thing I want to focus on when it comes to conditioning with manifestors is initiation. So you are here to initiate and start and drive new projects, but understanding again how you might be forcing your ideas onto others and not necessarily allowing room for others to share their ideas and thoughts. Really exploring your inner authority is how you can decondition from this and understand when you are trying to force an idea or project onto others. Where is this impulse coming from? What is the end goal? Do you have space to hear what other people have to contribute to the idea before acting on it? Another thing that I think is interesting when it comes to manifestors, especially those with an emotionally defined authority, and on top of that, especially those that have the 36-35 channel or the 41-30 channel, being aware of when you are having these initiative thoughts or these ideas that you want to kind of put on others, and you're not necessarily going through the process of speaking with your inner authority and understanding why you are initiating these thoughts or ideas, and how to make sure you're not forcing, or if you are coming up with these ideas, how to make sure you're not just sharing them and then the next day changing your mind, because a lot of times it comes up that manifestors will have a thought or an idea, go after it, force everyone into it, and then they will backtrack a day later. This especially happens in emails, so being aware if you are sending out emails and then you're constantly feeling like you didn't mean to send that, you didn't mean to say that, really being aware of your inner authority and speaking with your inner voice before speaking out loud. As manifestors, you have a very strong throat energy and people will hear what you have to say, but it's important to discern when they should be hearing what you have to say versus when that's a thought that is perhaps for yourself. I hope you enjoyed this video learning about the different conditioning and how to decondition from these conditionings in human design as it pertains to manifestors. Make sure to subscribe. I will be coming out with a projector and reflector video soon, and I can't wait to hear what you guys think. And if you have any questions, please don't feel shy to leave them in the comment box below. Thank you.